I've had a lot of aha moments in my life. As a creative person, I'd say the first aha moment actually came to me from my grandmother, who was one of my real life mentors. Two things as a young person I remember her saying. One, we were out in the backyard in South Florida watching a Mercury space shot, which I thought was the coolest thing in the world, going up into space on a Saturday afternoon, and I looked over and she was crying. And I said, "Grandma, why are you crying?" And she said, "Don't you see, they're piercing the belly of God." And I realized that technology is not a thing to celebrate for everybody, and science is not a thing to celebrate for everybody. I want to say about 3 months later, I was with her on a rare family vacation in the Florida Keys, and she asked me to sing a song for her, which I believe was the Star-Spangled Banner, and I couldn't remember the last line of it. And I was really embarrassed, and she said, "Don't worry about it, it's just a song. Make the last line up." And I said, "Wait, we're allowed to do that?" And she said, "Of course. You can make up anything you want. Sing the Star-Spangled Banner and just make up your own last line." And I will tell you, that was the moment where I realized creativity was never anything to be afraid of. And so that was a true gift that came to me from my grandmother. Another giant aha moment was the 1964 World's Fair. I was 9 years old. I'd never been out of the state of Florida before. I flew to Flushing Meadows. I went into a theater, and I believed that I saw Abraham Lincoln come back to life, stand up on a stage, walk down to the foots of that stage, and talk to me. About an hour or two later, I was riding in a car. It was the Ford Pavilion, and I thought I saw dinosaurs back alive walking the earth. And I remember pulling on my father's sleeve and saying, "Dad, how did that happen?" And he said, "A man named Walt Disney invented that." That was my introduction to what is called the magic of Disney. It was virtual reality through animatronics on a level that completely made you believe what you were seeing as a child. Also, when I was young, there were some health aha moments. The earliest one was the passing of my grandfather, which I didn't really understand because I was too young. I just knew somebody who I loved was gone. My best friend lived about a block and a half away from me, and when we were 14 years old, he got diagnosed with an adolescent, very aggressive liver cancer. And our parents came to the two of us. Our parents were physicians. They decided the right thing to do was to tell him the chemotherapy was going to be really hard, and it was going to be truly a difficult process for him, but he'd be fine and he'd be cured. But to tell me the truth, which was that his prognosis was that they had about 6 months of life. And my job, while we went to summer school that summer to learn driver's education, was to be his bodyguard and get in between him and any junior high school boy who did what junior high school boys do, is pick on the kid who doesn't look like he can take care of himself. And to lie to him every day and tell him he was going to get better.
How did that impact you? Because I can relate to that.
What I learned was that every human being, when they are facing their own mortality, no matter what age they are, deserves the respect to know, because we all have things to plan for when end of life is near. In my wellness company, it's one of the reasons that we call the patient journey from diagnosis to treatment to healing to well-being, because wellness is not always a part of the end of a chronic disease path. Well-being can be. Whether you are a child or an adolescent or an adult, finding a state of well-being before you pass is a very important thing to do. The other health moment, when I was way too young to have to deal with it, was my mom's stage 4 recurrence of her breast cancer. When my parents were divorced and I was the oldest child, and in a day that preceded hospice care, I needed to make her end-of-life decisions. When it was clear that she was never going to come out of the drug-induced coma that she was on, the oncology at the hospital she was in did a very brave thing. He probably could have lost his job for it. He said, when you decide that this needs to be over, here's my home phone number, call me and I'll tell you what to do. 3 o'clock in the morning, my sister and I tried to bring her out of that morphine-induced coma. We backed off her morphine and we realized that this was a person who's never going to have another conscious moment in the world. And I picked up the phone and I called this guy and he said, your mom's diabetes, your mom is an adult diabetic. If you turn off her insulin, she will pass very peacefully in the next 12 hours. And this is the valve and this is what you do. And I ended my mom's life. You learn a lot in those moments about compassion, about humanity, and about what the circle of life is all about. I can tell you that 12 hours later, when she passed, it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen because I saw pain leave her body. So, both very foundational things in my health education. They caused me to live my life in a very interesting way. I then grew up thinking I had to somehow have more conditioning and better conditioning than my cousin or my mom ever had, because I knew that sooner or later in this life we confront a life-threatening condition. It's inevitable. The diseases of aging happen, and unless there is a plane crash or a fiery car crash or something that happens suddenly, chances are we're going to confront one of the diseases of aging. So I was the kid who I was done with drugs and alcohol when I went to college. I wasn't drinking when I was in college. I literally, true story, got let go from a Hollywood film once in the 80s because after becoming a part of the director's inner circle and being invited into the trailer to do cocaine, I politely refused. And the next Monday I was looking for another job because it was like, how can we trust that guy? He won't do drugs with us. I thought for a very long time, people used to ask me, why are you still in the gym? I was a competitive athlete when I was in college. Why do you still go to the gym? Why do you eat the way you do? Why don't you party? And I thought I was living my life so that if a life-threatening illness happened to me, I'd have the conditioning to beat it. What I didn't realize was living in that level of health and knowing myself healthy as well as I did, it would give me the advantage to know when something very subtle was going wrong. And something very subtle went south as I was approaching my 50th birthday. The signs were extremely subtle. A slow, progressive weight gain. I hadn't changed my exercise routine or my diet. An energy wall about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And in typical guy style, I went, I'll cut carbs and starch out of my diet. That'll bring the weight back down. And an extra cup of coffee in the afternoon will fix the energy lag. And they sort of did. And true story, the day my Disney corporate physical showed up, I heard my mom's voice in the back of my head. And it said, don't pretend that nothing's wrong. That's what I did. I went to my GP the next day and I said, there's some very subtle signs. And blood work, full physical, couldn't find it. I was very lucky to be a senior executive at the Walt Disney Company and have a senior executive physical program that afforded me a full body MRI as an option. And that's where the single tumor was found in my thyroid gland. There ended up being another one that was found in the pathology work after surgery. But at the moment, that one was too small to see via imaging. So what I learned is that knowing your body in health gives you the ability to know when something very subtle is going wrong. If we spend our lives, not in health, we don't see it until it's pathological, and that's when it's really a problem and you struggle to reverse it.